Good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started tonight. So thank you all so much for being here. We're extremely excited for this program. Before we do get started, I wanted to let you know that if you are missing a purse this evening, we found one. Oh, there we go. It's in the lobby. Mystery solved. So again, thank you for being here. Welcome to Atlanta History Center. I do want to mention, if you haven't been here in a little while, this room might look a little bit different than you last remember. We did an amazing renovation to this room. Actually, during the pandemic, it was a mixed feeling knowing we're like, when are we going to not have programs to where we can redo this room? And then that, got answered for us. But we're very grateful to the James M. Cox Foundation for funding the renovation of this building. My name is Claire Haley. I'm the Vice President of Public Relations and Programs here for the History Center. It's absolutely my pleasure to welcome you here this evening to hear from Neely Young. Many of you already know him very well, so I don't feel like I have to do too much of an introduction, but I do want to recognize a few of the highlights. He is a native of Cedartown, Georgia, a graduate of the University of Georgia, go Dogs, and a proud journalist. I graduated in 2017 from there. He is just a pillar of community journalism. He has been a force in local journalism all over the state, starting out in Valdosta and being a publisher in Marietta, Canton, Dalton, and Clayton County. Most recently in his newspaper career, he was the head of Georgia Trend magazine, retired from there in 2017, and just continues his writing career now with his first book, Georgia Made. So if you don't already have your copy of the book, I see a lot of you do, but if you want one for a friend or a family member or haven't gotten yours yet, they're available for purchase after the event. They're 25% off tonight, so we appreciate you supporting Atlanta History Center and Mr. Young through your purchase. And he will be signing books after the event as well if you would like yours personalized. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Neely Young.
I just want to open with a little personal thing. Go Dogs! Woof, woof. And I've got Vince in my talk here, so I'll definitely get that. I want to mention Hernan Murray. Hernan, where are you? Okay. I'm his little brother from fraternities, and I hadn't seen you since 1962. But he's a very distinguished position here. I've kept up with you. Thank you all really for this great introduction. She lied, of course, but but how did I decide to write a book about the most important figures who shaped the state in the 20th century? The book, of course, is Georgia Made. A few years ago, I received 2 operations on the side of my head up here to correct a benign cancer condition, and it was benign, thank the Lord. The result of the operation caused me to lose the ability to speak and write. To lose this ability as a journalist is really a shock, because that's what my whole profession was. So I had to receive major surgery to correct the condition. And I had a wonderful woman, a person, help me regain the ability to speak. The condition is called aphasia. We have several physicians here, so they'll know what this is. Aphasia is named aphasia, and it robs you to the ability to communicate. The example of aphasia would be mixing up 2 words like cemetery and seminary, which one of my friends told his dad he was going to go into the ministry. And his dad was really taken aback when the son said he was going to cemetery. Did I say that right? Now you know the reason of the meaning of aphasia. My therapist treated me by asking something to write down something the best I could, and then I would give it back to her. And she would correct it and then give it back to me, and then that's where the process of me reading it back to her. That's how my speech eventually came about. And if I stumble on some words, you'll know what I had. But I somehow I've been able to survive. The other therapy that I had to write about, what was I going to write about to go with her? Over 20 years, my magazine, Georgia Trend, would pick the most influential Georgians from the previous year. Saxby, are you out there? You in there a lot? So I came up with the idea during this process of writing about the most influential Georgians in the 20th century, not this century. I like to write columns concerning history, and I have been privileged to be a curator in the Georgia Historical Society. For the book, I picked people, politicians, including authors, business, sports, religion, and I used history books and advice for other historians, websites, and other methods to keep and pick the subjects to write about. I started my career in 1958. I don't want to tell you how old I am, but as a journalist for my family's newspaper in Valdosta, Georgia. So over the years, I have interviewed and known many of these people who are listed in the book. I thought I would share my selections to you, some of them tonight. We all know Jimmy Carter. He was a peanut farmer from a small town in South Georgia. He ran for governor of Georgia. And then when his term ended, he entered national politics. And to the surprise of many people, he won. Civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. grew up in Atlanta, and his story tells how he became not only the most famous Georgian, he is the most influential person in America and the world. But some of these you don't know. I'm going to kind of focus on some of them too, as people who made a big difference in the state. Martha Berry was a young girl in the 1930s Depression who was from Rome, Georgia. She created a school to help educate children who came from poor families in her home, right close to her home. Times were hard for the school, and Berry sent a letter to auto magnate Henry Ford asking for his support. She didn't know, she thought she was going to get something really good from him, but Ford sent her a dime. So she was really discouraged about that. So she took the dime to a feed store and purchased 10 cents of peanuts. The students planted the peanuts, and at the end of the season, harvested a crop and sold it for $1,500. This is way back, you know. Berry deposited the money, then wrote out a $1,500 check, and she sent it to Ford along with a letter that read, "Mr. Ford, here's your $1,500 return on your dime. You invest in my school." She noted to Mr. Ford that the peanuts were grown by her students. Ford was really impressed with this. He took a train from New York to Rome, Georgia, and met with Berry to look over her school. He left her $3 million. How about that? With other donations, her school grew to contain 129 buildings on 27,000 acres. And it's in Rome, and it's the most beautiful campus. And it was named by many historians that it's the most beautiful college in America. Ted Turner. He is the most outrageous person to be included on the list. Turner grew up in Savannah, and after flunking out of Brown University, Saxby, you and I made ours, we didn't flunk, right? He had joined his father's outdoor advertising business. It was a small business, and when his father died, Turner became president. And he took that small outdoor business into a billion-dollar industry. Turner experienced many signs of mania that led him into some really risky ventures. He expanded this family business into radio, television, sports, and he actually owned the Braves, Atlanta Braves, at one time. His empire was always awash in debt. I mean, he had debt up to here. And so he was always looking for a way to get out of that. So he visited his friend Tom Cousins, and he got $1 million loan from Cousins just to make his monthly payroll. At the time, there were only 3 TV networks: ABC, CBS, and NBC. So Cousins, as he was walking out with his check, he said, "What are you doing next, Ted?" Turner replied, says, "I'm going to put all these networks out of business. I'm going to create a network called CNN that will provide 24-hour news coverage all over the world." And he left. Cousin looked over there and says, "I just gave $1 million to a crazy man." In 1996, media giant Time Warner purchased Turner's broadcasting system for $7.5 billion. The merger didn't really work out like they wanted it to, but he still had over $2.5 billion. With his wealth, he became a significant philanthropist. Did I say that right? Giving money to good causes and pledging $1 billion to the United Nations. Was that a good investment? I'm not sure. He actually got connected with Senator Sam Nunn, and the biggest thing he did was establish the Nuclear Threat Initiative to keep us all safe. I would say that not too bad for a man who flunked out of Brown University and changed the world. Someone you probably will never know is Bob Sherrill, president of Georgia Power Company. He's the man who kept the lights on in Georgia. In the 1970s, Georgia's major utility, the Georgia Power Company, was almost broke. The oil embargo in 1975 drove up fuel prices for gas, and the country was in a major recession. And inflation and interest rates went up the roof. I don't know if you remember that when you want to buy a house back in that time, interest rates were at 18%. Look, we worried about it being 1.5 cents now. Sherrill took an optimistic approach, and he delivered a message of hope for his employees, and then he took it public, which you usually don't have happening. And he told them in a series of newspaper ads and Rotary meetings and anywhere he could go to tell the story that Georgia Power was in trouble. He actually ran a big series of ads in the Journal-Constitution informing the readers about the crisis. At that time, Georgia Power was committing to be open at that time and communicating with its customers. The approach worked. One of the things that he went up to New York to get some bonds up to the big time banks up there in New York, and they wouldn't give him a loan. He came back down and said that, I feel like I've had a party and nobody came. In 1985, Sherrill partnered with the Salvation Army to assist people dealing with changing times who needed food, clothing, shelter, and help with their utility bills. The program was called Share, and customers could add $1, $2, or $10 to their monthly utility bill, and Georgia Power would match the donation. This program now, today, assists more than 50,000 families annually. And over the years, Project Share has collected $72 million to help those in need. When Sherrill retired in 1989, and at the time of his death in 2008, Georgia is the largest utility in the Southeast. But he is remembered as the man who started Share in Georgia, and the man who in really hard times kept the lights going on Georgia, in Georgia. This next one is I think y'all might know him, Coach Vince Dooley. Go Dogs! He's regarded as the University of Georgia greatest football coach. In his 25 season, 1964 to 1988, he compiled a record of 21 wins to only 72 losses. In 1980, he led the, is that right? Oh, I got it back. See, I told you. That helps if you tell people, you know. I'm not going to, it was good to me. I think it's correct. In 1980, he led the team to win the national championship and was named NCAA Coach of the Year. After his retirement in 2004, Dooley launched another career as an author, gardener, and historian. He and his wife, Barbara, became keynote speakers and entertaining people at community events to raise money for charities all over the state. In 2019, the Board of Regents honored Dooley by naming the field at Sanford Stadium Dooley Fields. Now, we might have another person coming up, but this will be in the 21st century. Kirby. In the 1930s and 40s, as the governor, Eugene Talmadge dominated politics in Georgia on a platform that made segregation and white supremacy his main theme. He developed a reputation as a man who disregarded ethics and ruled in a very corrupt manner. He billed himself as the poor man's friend, and he was a colorful character, wearing red suspenders and a straw hat. He would draw large crowds, taking on the Atlanta elite and those lying Atlanta newspapers. The public loved his speeches, and they'd scream, "Give him hell, Gene." Talmadge was accused of pocketing $20,000 in state revenue funds, more than $300,000 in today's dollars. He famously said when he got caught, "Yes, I stole. But I did it for you, the people of Georgia." Voters just didn't even care. They said kept him in office. In one election, Talmadge called an election official in a small county, and he asked the official, "How many people have voted for me here?" And the official said, "How many do you need, Gene?" And this goes into a more incredible story. Talmadge lost his next term as governor to a new and moderate man named Ellis Arnold, but Talmadge wasn't finished. In the election of 1946, voters put him back in office. To make sure he would win the race, he ran his son, Herman, as an alternative candidate. Talmadge passed away before he could take office. Nevertheless, he tried to control the election from the grave. In his will, he insisted that his son, Herman, take over his place. I think Herman was 28 years. This action caused the three-governor controversy. No fewer than 3 men claimed to be governor: Herman Talmadge, the outgoing governor, and and Melvin E. Thompson, the newly elected lieutenant governor. Herman Talmadge seized the governor's office and changed the locks on the door. Arnold set up a satellite office right down the hall, and Melvin Thompson said he was governor. All three claimed that they were elected governor. There's more. An Atlanta newspaper man named George Godwin found voting fraud in Talmadge's home in Telfair County. Godwin found that some citizens rose up from their graves and voted for Herman. The dead voters were counted in alphabetical order. The fraud story made national news in papers and radio stations all over the country and added to an image of Georgia being the additional laughing stock. Godwin won the Pulitzer Prize for exposing Eugene's crooked effort to change the election, even after his death. In 1947, the Supreme Court ruled that the duly elected governor, Melvin Thompson, was Eugene's successor. But all this says to me is that the more things change, the more they stay the same. Truett Cathy built an empire out of chicken sandwich. Unbelievable. To lure customers away from fast food, burgers, he devised a billboard ad campaign promoting billboard cows, trying to tell people to leave, don't eat meat, eat chicken. Cows would write on the billboards, tell them the cows sent you. Tell them the cows, and all roads lead to chicken. B puts you to sleep. Valentine's message says the cows on the billboards. Roses are red, violets are blue. Eat more chicken. Moo. I'm going to talk a little bit about, off the cuff, about the book. Well, if you read some of the main people in the book, it'll actually, during the 50s and 60s, tell you the civil rights story in Georgia. When the Board of Education from the Supreme Court was passed, it was told that you couldn't have a separate an equal school system. Everybody has to be merged. When this all happened, Governor Marvin Griffin fought the Supreme Court to say that he definitely wanted to have, come hell or high water, that I'm going to keep the blacks out of school. He's the one that changed the Georgia state flag to incorporate Confederate stars and bars. When Griffin ran for governor, on the next election, he held large rallies serving barbecue to the voters. But the voters did not like what Griffin had done. So he got beat by Carl Sanders. After the election, Griffin said, everybody that voted for me ate my chicken, my barbecue. I don't think they voted for me. One of the real heroes in this era was Governor Ernest Vandiver. I would say he's really the most famous Georgia governor in the state during that time. He ran as successfully for the governorship, pledging no, not one black child should be integrated in the schools. But when he came in the office, he changed his position. He established policies sending making sure that segregation is going to be used in the whole state. He commissioned a man, John Sibley, to go out and crisscross all the state and held public hearings on the issue. More than 18,000 attended these events, and kind of made it feel like the Georgians would accept integration to the state, to the schools. So Sibley's commission gave out and also endorsed by governor, and it just changed the whole world as far as the South. Now, all the southern states were fighting this, but Vanderbilt, he said, I'm going to change my position, and we're going to integrate all the schools. And so in Savannah, for instance, this all happened just like to everybody. The mayor of Savannah joined with black protesters and got a lot of people to go involved and march down Broughton Street to increase and open the schools. In Albany, Georgia, black leaders organized the Albany movement that removed all segregation statutes. Atlanta Mayor William Hartsfield appointed Herbert Jenkins as chief of the police. When Birmingham put the dogs and the hoses on the blacks trying to protest in Alabama, Jenkins, he did the opposite to do. He got an integration of the schools, libraries, and restaurants in Atlanta. And so that was an important thing, being in Atlanta. Former federal judge Augustus Boodle was famed for his legal decisions on desegregation. He said that all schools need to be open instead of going through the courts like we do today. And he was asked, how'd you do that? He said it wasn't hard at all. Right is right. Georgia in these times became an inspiration for other states to help other states to say right is right. My book would like to ask you if you could apply this exercise with yourself, children, or your grandchildren, so you can come up with your own list or add to Georgia Mate's selection. It will open you an important perspective of Georgia events. And I hope that writing this book, I can encourage other people who have aphasia, strokes, or other brain injuries, that they can, with proper treatment, they can lead successful lives. Many of these included in Georgia Made are already in their graves, soon to be joined by all of us. And they will be remembered collectively in the powerful march of Georgia history. Thank you. Do we have some softball questions?
And I'm going to...
I'm a aphasia graduate too, but I'm tended to ask us why Duncan Beard is not in the book. Right. So I know you have this question every time you do this. How did you decide that you were going to figure out who the 100 are?
Well, we had, in Georgia Trend in 2000 issue, we did something very similar to this, and so I picked some of the people from the magazine back then, and just I did a lot of research. But the people that are after they were people I really wrote about, investigated, including you. So that's kind of how I picked it, just at random. And I get a lot of people saying, well, why did you not put Ty Cobb in there? Ty Cobb. Well, I'll get him in my next book. Any other questions? I need some softballs now. Come on.
When you're talking about outrageous, you're talking about Ted Turner but how would you compare Ted to James Brown?
A lot of mania. A lot of people real successful have some mania. You know, you talk about brain injuries, but manic depressive. Ted Turner was open about he had mania. You know, and so they seem to come out of it and get people to help them, like Tom Cousins, and get to therapy, which is what I hope this book will do. Yes, sir.
Did you ever write about Ted Turner's 3 martini lunches at Sirloin Saddle the other day?
It was only 3? I need some more now. Come on.
We have a very diverse crowd in here, in the group that you've chosen. Were you focused on, did you have to focus on making sure there was diversity, or did it just kind of happen naturally?
Well, especially in the 1950s and 60s, people are still Andrew Young. Of course, Martin Luther King was passed away back a long time ago. But I didn't go into the diversity thing. I just went to people I thought were famous for what they did for Georgia. Wright Bazemore, for instance, is the greatest football coach, high school. And so I did a big story about him. Martha Berry, like I just did, but there are a lot of, in academia, and sports, finance. An interesting character is Mills Lane. He was built CNS Bank, if y'all remember it being CNS Bank, up to one of the largest banks in the Southeast. But he went down to Savannah, that's where he was from, and he helped this group called the citizens in Savannah to integrate the schools. And he was there for doing that. And so there are a lot of people like this that I hope will tell a little story for them, what they did and their impact in Georgia. Yes, sir? Did you have some? Oh, you can.
On that. Neely, did you get to interview any of these people personally?
A lot of them. I don't have the Sam Nunn, Saxby Chambliss, you know. Yes, I've been in the business almost 60 years, so a lot of these people were people that I knew, and I could write about them and have my perspective on what they did and why they did it.
How about James Brown?
Oh, right, the Flames. Well, he was at the University of Georgia in our fraternity party and sang to us. That's why I picked him. Yes, sir.
Saxby did a wonderful job at Johnny's funeral.
Boy, he did. That's right. He certainly did. Johnny, I gave him a Georgian of the Year, and so in his acceptance speech to our event, said, "Well, Neely and I were chasing beers in University of Georgia." So that was, yes, ma'am. Okay, somebody said, "This is it." Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it so much.